always a gamble when it comes to your neighbors. You're really hoping that you're gonna get good ones, but sometimes that is not the case. And that is not the case for the person in this story because they have been dealing with their horrible neighbor for 3 years. My lack of patience could never. This story came February 21st, 2017. So about 2 months ago, I posted here on Reddit legal advice that I moved into my first home and I was warned by a friend who used to be a police officer that my new neighbor would call the police for what he said, everything you could imagine in the past. Ugh, that is not a way you want to start your move. Oh, my friend who's a police officer warned me that she's going to be calling the police. I would not move there.
No, thank you.
Dogs barking, loud cars, loud kids at the playground across the street, people walking on the sidewalk in front of her house, etc. My first post here was asking if there was anything I could do legally to keep her at bay from calling the police. This was about a week before I moved into the home, and pretty much every response to me was laughing at me and telling me that if I wasn't a bad neighbor, she wouldn't need to call the police. I took it with a grain of salt. Fast forward to moving day, and we pull up to the house in a U-Haul. About 30 minutes later, a police officer pulls up in his cruiser and checks in on us because they received a call from somebody in the neighborhood. Doesn't take a detective to figure this one out. I asked what the call was about and he said he couldn't tell me, but we just told him we bought the house and had some friendly small talk and he was on his way. I'm convinced that it was our neighbor who made the call to the police. All we were doing was moving in. A week later, it snows and I'm outside shoveling, and so is my neighbor. I get to talking to her, and within 30 seconds, she starts bragging, more or less, about how she will call the cops on everybody and everything. I couldn't believe it. Google searched her name, and an article popped up about a harassment charge she acquired 3 years ago. She got into a verbal altercation with a neighbor, and she hit them with a spade shovel. She seems like a real upstanding citizen. Fast forward to present time. Last night, it was unusually warm. I decided to get a fire going in our fire pit in our backyard. Before I could even get it lit, she is knocking on the fence and asks us if she can talk to me. She says, "I don't know what you guys are planning on doing over there, but there aren't too many people having fires with 10 to 15 mile per hour gusts. If any of that smoke makes it into my house, I'm gonna have to make a call." I tell her that we are still going to have a fire and we would be inside in about an hour. So my question is, if she keeps threatening to make calls or have police show up at my door when I'm not doing anything illegal, is there anything I can do in terms of harassment or getting a restraining order? I mean, she already has one on her file, so might as well just start compiling. We're going right to the Reddit comment section. Someone said, "Let the boy cry wolf. Eventually the police will take action or they will deprioritize her calls. Then you rob her. It's a perfect plan." Hopefully that's a joke. OP responded and said, "LMAO, I love it, but seriously, her always having to have an input on what we're doing and how she doesn't like it is going to get old real quick." It was already old before you moved in. If someone warned me of that, I would have been annoyed enough to not get the house. Unless you already bought the house and then they warned you, because then you're just screwed. Next comment. "Sometimes it's easier just to be perceived as the a-hole. You're never going to get on this woman's good side. It's just not going to happen. So your best bet is to make it clear to her that you don't give a flying F what she thinks or says. Likewise, make it clear that you will seek a restraining order if she ever calls the police on you without basis again." Next comment. "If she knocks on your door, ignore her. If she calls the cops on you, be pleasant and explain the situation to them. People like this eventually acquire bad rap and the police will dismiss their calls. If, however, they do actually cause you damages in a weird situation, you can certainly speak to a lawyer." OP wrote back and said, "You've got a point here. there. I haven't actually had the police show up yet to talk to us, but the day is coming. I am looking forward to meeting with them. We'll have coffee and food to offer them. Again, nothing illegal is going on. She just has to have input on how we do anything and how she doesn't like it. I wonder if that's why she called when you moved in, just to kind of, I don't know, what's the word I'm thinking of? Not mark her territory, but let it be known that, like, just so you know, I will call the police, which is so annoying. All right, we have our first update, and it was 3 days later. I'm just guessing she's called the cops. I'll try and keep things short. I took all of the comments I read about what to do in consideration. Most suggested investing in a security camera system. As much as I don't want to do this, I'm gonna have to. Today, while I was at work, my significant other had to run to the store for something before work. My significant other has to drive past our house to get to work from the store. My significant other said that while passing our house, our crazy neighbor lady is in our front yard with a leaf blower, blowing leaves around our yard, knowing that nobody was home in our house. Clearly on our property, no questions asked. I am irate. Security cameras are being bought today and being installed as soon as possible. At what point is trespassing actually trespassing? I do not want her on my property, but she was clearly on my property. A part of me wants to say she was doing what she was doing to get our dog worked up inside of our house. I am desperately looking for some help here. Do you think she was doing that so that your dog would bark and then she could just call the police for a noise complaint? Yeah, for sure. That's my guess. Back to the comment section, my favorite place besides Dollarama. Someone said, would you be covered by saying, don't ever come on my property again, or would you have to say leave every time she comes over? I don't think you're covered either way. I think she's gonna do what she wants. But he wrote back and said, I will give another update here. How spoiled are we? I can tell her that she was seen in our front yard today all I want, but there is no physical proof of it, so there's nothing I can do legally about it, and she can just keep denying that it ever even happened. I actually only live 1 block away from where I work, and I went home on my lunch break today. I went out back and sat down on the steps. She was blowing leaves. There are no leaves where we live right now. It's February in Pennsylvania. She was blowing dirt and sticks under the fence onto my property. I just sat there and I saw the dirt and stick cloud coming closer and closer to me. She must have seen me sitting there once she got a decent peek through the boards of the fence and immediately turned around and started blowing the middle of her yard. I think I startled her because she thought nobody was home at our place. I evaluated what had just happened and realized I didn't have any substantial evidence for anything worthwhile. I could have asked her what she thought she was doing blowing stuff into my yard, but at this point, it would have just gotten into a petty argument back and forth. Yeah, you guys are dealing with a narcissist. You think if they're like, I saw you blowing sticks and dirt under my fence, you think she's gonna be like, oh my God, you're totally right. I'm so sorry. No, it's all part of the game. So I waited a minute or two and I stood up and I waved at her and I yelled, hello, over to her. As somebody else said here, just kill her with kindness. So that's what I tried to do. We made small talk about our dogs and how nice the weather was. She apologized about Sunday night with the fire. I'm surprised by that. I basically told her that we're allowed to do what we want if it's legal. Still going to be getting cameras though. I do not trust this lady at all. The weirdest thing of all is that when I was talking to her through the fence today, she said, oh, are you already done with work for the day? Mind you, I was not in my work outfit. I completely changed into everyday clothing when I got home to make it look like I didn't just come home from work. It seemed like she knew my schedule, which weirded me out a bit. Yeah. Next comment. Just FYI, you keep saying you have no proof and no evidence, but your testimony and your significant other's testimony are evidence. Sure, these eyewitnesses' accounts aren't video recordings, but these are admissible evidence since you both can be cross-examined if it ever got to that point. Her potential denial would also be evidence, and the potential trier of fact, judge or jury, would have the job of figuring out who is more trustworthy, given on the totality of the evidence. Write down important details like dates and times of all these incidents, even if individually they seem small, and have your significant other do the same for the ones that they witness. Like I said, yes, I think you should definitely start having everything. Have a whole journal for her or a document on your computer, anything. Because I have a feeling it's gonna lead to something bigger. Next update came 6 weeks later. We are now at April 11th, 2017. So we left off where, you and your significant other caught the whole leaf blowing thing. That is where the second update starts, he says. So fast forward from February to March 15th. It is around 9:45 p.m. and I am out back smoking a cigarette. I see movement out of the corner of my eye and I look over towards it and I see this hand throwing pieces of garbage into my yard over the fence. It's crazy neighbor lady. She did not know that I was outside, just good timing on my part, I guess. I played dumb and I asked, "What are you doing, crazy neighbor lady?" And she quickly stopped throwing the trash and quickly turned around to go inside of her house. As she gets closer to her house, she turns around and says, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" With which I responded louder, "What are you doing?" She says that she was just outside checking on her yard. Now mind you, it's 9:45 p.m. and it has just started to snow. We were projected to get 12 plus inches of snow, so I think her plan was to throw trash into my yard and then have it be covered up by the snow. I went over to where I saw her hand coming over the fence and I found a random piece of plastic and a soda lid. Think of the ones that you get from fast food places with your drink, the kind that you poke the straw through. They were laying neatly on top of the leaves and mulch bed that they were thrown on. This had me livid. I caught her in the act and I bought a security camera system that night on Amazon. You should have bought them after the leaf blowing situation. It came within 2 days and I set it up that weekend. I set up all the cameras inside of windows looking out towards my property. It took only 3 days of having the cameras to find her throwing more little pieces of trash onto our property. It's just little pieces of trash that just keep ending up in our yard. We live in a city along one of the busiest streets. It's unfortunate that people litter out of their cars, but it does happen. If I see any trash in my yard, I will just pick it up and throw it out. Crazy neighbor lady sees any trash in her yard, she will throw it onto her neighbor's yards, so it's not her problem. Over the period of a month, I caught her 3 different times on camera throwing trash from her property onto mine. She physically picks it up, comes over to my property, and sets it down well on my side of the front yard when nobody is home. To some, it may sound like I'm going to extremes to try and screw this lady over, but given her past history that I've heard from other neighbors, I'm stomping out the fire, which is her, before it can even get started. Last night, I caught her on camera for the 4th time coming onto my property to throw more trash into my yard. This time, she has her dogs with her and she's letting her dogs roam around without a leash in my yard. I had finally had enough and I called the police to come out to look at all my videos and to see if there was anything I could do about it. A police officer came out and looked at my videos and I read him the journal of all the interactions that we've had with her, and he's kind of blown away with all the work I've been putting in to protect myself. My neighbor is a huge PITA for my city's police department. She makes calls to them for things like the kids being too loud in the playground across the street from us and a lot of unnecessary stuff. And they have no problem slapping her with charges if legitimate charges can be made. I could have pressed charges against her for trespassing, littering, and not having her dog on a leash, but I opted to just have the police officer go over to her house and give her a warning. I don't really have the time to take off work to go to court. I told him to let her know that if she is ever caught on my property or throwing trash on my property, then I will press charges. He was licking his chops to go over there and ream her ass out. The city police hate her, and like many others have probably mentioned, they take all her calls with a grain of salt. Now I'm just waiting to see what the next chapter has in store for me. I'm sure that she was told she has been caught on camera, so I'll have to wait and see if she tries looking for the cameras. By the way, these cameras are fun to watch. It's like I'm living next to a 61-year-old child, except not fun at all. Good news for us is that we have more updates. Bad news for him. But I'm going to take a sip of water and you should too. Let me know what's in your cup though. Cheers. I have to come on here very quick and say thank you so much for 200,000 subscribers. But not only that, also the love you guys are showing me celebrating that milestone. Some of you were there when I hit the first 100K, and the journey from 100K to 200K was a lot longer, man. It's been a journey. I appreciate it so much that you guys all just show up for me every day. That's why I continue to show up for you guys every day. And I just want to say thank you, and I love you, and I'm so excited. Next update came 3 months later, July 28th, 2017. Last week, we talked to another police officer so we can try to work something out. Basically, the moment she sees a leaf in her yard, she gets pissed. I told her I'm not home all the time to constantly monitor every single leaf that falls from my tree. Oh, the tree is on the opposite side of the yard from her, by the way. My yard is not littered with leaves, and the police even said that my yard looks fine, but she persists on calling the police out every time anything falls into her yard. I have done my research on the situation, as dumb as I think it is, but once a leaf falls from a tree, I'm not liable for what happens to it. That's what internet articles say, at least. Could anybody produce any sort of Pennsylvania state legal documentation that says that leaves falling from a tree is not a crime? I can't believe I'm even here asking this, but I'm getting really sick of the police coming out for everything I do outside. I just want to present it to the police and neighbor so it stops. Edit. I will give a little more information about the past few months. Within a month of moving into the house this past December, I was out back after dark, it was no later than 8 p.m., breaking down some boxes that we had left over from moving. I took a quick break from breaking them down and I see this hand, okay, we already know, throwing trash. Okay, so now we're at where the police went over to her. The police did give her a warning. The trash in our backyard that we thought was getting blown there has stopped as well, which is crazy. Yeah, because she was putting it there. After that, I had been nothing but nice to her, and I would say hello whenever I saw her. I really don't want to have problems, but I had to do something about the trash being thrown into our lawn. Anytime I would say hello, I would get ignored. She even went as far as to say that she was going to charge me with harassment if I didn't stop. What? Last week, the police came out again for leaves in her yard. He suggested that we talk to one another while he was there to listen. She explained herself. She thinks that we are not maintaining our property well enough and is upset that we aren't outside to pick up every leaf that falls from our tree and doesn't want any grass clippings blowing into her yard. The police officer looked over at my yard and looked back at her and said that there is nothing wrong with my yard and that it looks better than a lot of other properties in the city. She said that she bought her house that doesn't have a tree because she didn't want to have to clean up leaves. Newsflash, every house on our block has a tree except for hers. She just wishes that we would take care of our yard better. Again, the police officer enforced to her that according to city law, our yard was fine. We agreed with each other that if we have any problems with one another, that we would talk to each other first before getting police involved. 8 days later, she called the police again for grass and leaves being in her yard. As far as I could tell, there wasn't any grass left behind. And when I mean in her yard, I'm not saying it is in the middle of her yard. It is mere inches from where our yard meets her yard. She has been nothing but a headache since we moved in, and it's only getting worse. I have done nothing to her other than make sure that she has stopped throwing trash in my yard. Why did she start to do that? I don't know. Well, I know. Look at her other harassment charges. It's almost like this is what she does as her full-time job. This is what she does.
That's just her thing.
It kind of reminds me of the documentation of that neighbor, except a very tragic story there, but you guys should go watch that documentary if you like crazy neighbor stories. But trigger warning, it's sad and it's sensitive. It's more than just a cuckoo bonker neighbor. All right, now we are jumping ahead 1 year later, because if you forgot, this goes on for 3 years. Now we are at July 17th, 2018. 18 a year later. About a month ago, I noticed that all of my grass along the fence between my neighbor and myself was completely dried up and dead. The dead grass starts about 6 inches from the fence and goes the entire length of the fence, approximately 75 feet. Crazy neighbor lady's grass is completely fine along the fence. The only thing I can think of is that she's spraying something under the fence onto my side to kill my grass. Now I've got nothing but ugly weeds growing up along the fence. Today, I noticed a brown circle, probably 2 feet in diameter, of dead grass in my backyard. It's no more than 10 feet away from my neighbor's fence. My girlfriend said that she took our 2 small dogs out there to go to the bathroom and they were rolling around and eating the dead grass from the same area. The only thing I can think of is that my crazy neighbor threw a cup of something over the fence to kill the grass, but I'm not sure why the dogs would be so interested in it. If it was something to kill the grass, I'm definitely not cool with my dogs rolling around and sniffing and eating whatever is in there. So question 1, what are some solutions I can do along the fence to stop the grass from dying? The only thing I can think of is some sort of decorative brick that runs the entire length of the fence and grows the grass back. Question 2, does anybody have any sort of idea what could have caused a 2-foot circle of dead grass, but also why my dogs were attracted to it? We live on the outskirts of the city, so there isn't much wildlife that could have just waltzed into the yard, urinate, and then just take off. Plus, it seemed to have happened overnight and is rather large. And yes, before anybody mentions it, I do have cameras still. I just don't have any time to watch the backyard. I will have to reposition them now. I thought you had one this whole time. Sir, you need one on every angle of your house. Have we learned nothing?
Now, what did we learn from this?
But we have reached the final update. And it was a year and a half after that. Oh my. And it came November 3rd, 2019. Here we go. Brace for impact. Over the past 3 years, we have learned a lot about them from various people. Mainly that my neighbor likes to stir up problems to get people pissed off at them. Then, when people get pissed off enough, they retaliate against my neighbor, and once that happens, my neighbor will take them to court. Believe me, I know it sounds crazy, but it is how it is. For example, when I had the police out for her trespassing and littering in my yard, I could have had her cited for those 2 things, but the police talked me out of it and told me that she would take me to court and fight it, even if she was going to lose. Also, the people that live on the other side of her other neighbors, they have been going back and forth in court for the past 15 years with her. Oh my gosh, could not be me, you guys. I never got any specifics on what, but from the one and only time I talked to those people, that's when they told me. My thought process is that she wants to get money out of people from taking time to court. I've lived next to her for 3 years and I have no idea what her motivation is in life or why she does what she does. So my neighbor likes to call the police, but also the fire department a lot. I have a friend who took an IT job at a call center that receives calls for people calling for the police and fire department for the entire county. The people taking the calls told my IT friend that my neighbor is the most frequent caller in the entire county. The obvious thing to do is just let it iron itself out and the police and fire companies will realize that she's full of crap, right? Wrong. I asked my IT friend how she can get away with calling that much. He said that when she makes a call, it's not really specific enough to blow off, but specific enough to where they might be an actual problem, a very gray area. For example, if someone is having a fire in their backyard legally and following all the laws in the city, she will call the fire department concerned about a fire because there's a lot of smoke in the neighborhood. This also goes for anybody that cooks out of a grill in the summertime, especially if you have a charcoal grill. She sees smoke, she calls the fire department. The thing with her though is that 99% of the time they are all BS, but if there was an actual problem and she called about it and nobody responded, she would take the city to the cleaners over it. Yeah, they can't ignore the calls. It gets old whenever the police and fire department show up to your door when you are just doing normal day activities. She was the most bizarre person to live next to. I've tried to figure her out, but I simply couldn't. The best way I can describe it is you're playing a game with her whether or not you want to be playing. Using past tense, does that mean you moved out? You moved away? And that game is home ownership. She makes the rules of the game, and when you break one of the rules of the game that she made up, she will have a referee look into it, meaning a police officer or the fire department. If the referees don't find anything wrong, she will get upset and start doing things like throwing trash into your yard or killing your grass. The obvious answer to all of it is to stand my ground, and that's what I did. But once you fight back, things are going to snowball with that neighbor, which is why we decided to move. Claps and snaps. The people behind her actually just moved as well because of her. This was our first home, and people always say that owning a home isn't easy. It's not, but living next to that neighbor made things so much worse. At one point early on while living there, I asked myself if we were bad neighbors. Nope, we just didn't do the things that she wanted us to. So we put up our house for sale and we found somebody to buy it at full price, and they pay the closing costs as well. We closed a few days ago and we walked out with a check. We drove by the house we just sold and saw that the new people pulled right up behind my neighbor's car. That's another thing that you should not do. You do not park behind her car or she will call the police for you being double parked or something. It's a public street, by the way. We see that they are parked behind her car. My girlfriend and I looked at each other and laughed. We then get a call from our realtor asking if we still have the keys from the old house. We forgot to hand them over at settlement. I wasn't about to go back to the old house and drop them off, so I just had my realtor do it. She dropped the keys off and called me again. She is also aware of how crazy my old neighbor is and was. She says, "You're never going to believe this. The people that bought your house already had a run-in with your neighbor. They said she came out yelling about where they parked and that only she can park in front of her house and that if they don't move, she will call the police." The people that bought the house then said to my realtor, "What's up with this lady?" To which my realtor said, "I'm not really sure. My seller always said that they were quiet people that kept to themselves." Liar. This is only the beginning of a long road for the people that bought the house. It wasn't even 30 minutes after they pulled up in front of the house and they already had a problem with the neighbor. I wish I could have told the people buying the house not to buy it because of the neighbor. I don't want anyone to go through what we did, but if I did tell people, then I would still be living the nightmare. Yeah, I guess you're like, better you than me, but also horrible. Let me know your thoughts, you guys. We love crazy neighbor stories on this channel, and I hope there's more out there, to be honest. Stay classy out there, stay sassy. I'll see you tomorrow.